All right. Welcome to the Soul Session. I am Reverend Lisa, and I am here to open up this sacred space for this amazing conversation to happen, and then I will get out of the way. So I'm going to encourage everybody to take one nice deep breath. Just breathe it all the way down. And as you release the breath, relax and know that this is sacred space. There is one life, one power, one presence, and each and every one of us are a representative of that presence, of that love, of that power, of that life. And so I am knowing that this conversation goes in unexpected and amazing directions, that we bring soul food to all of the wonderful godlings that are going to hear this, that it feeds them and meets whatever need it is that they come to this recording and this conversation. And I am grateful for these two wonderful people who have been patient with us as we have surfed through our technical challenges. And as always, Reverend Jesse, I'm grateful for you for being our fearless leader and for providing a place for this conversation to happen. And I am grateful that this conversation happens and will continue to happen, and it's going to be amazing. And so it is.
So it is.
So
Thank
it
you,
is.
Reverend Lisa. See you in a few. I welcome our guests tonight, Reverend Sheila Gautreaux and Stephen Fleming, who I've been calling Reverend Stephen Fleming in all of the promotional material leading up to this. So de facto and soon to be. Let me read you their bios, and then we'll go on from there. Reverend Sheila is an ordained Unity minister, licensed Unity teacher, published author, inspirational speaker, and certified radical forgiveness coach. She is known for her passion, humor, profound insights, and beautiful singing voice. A New Orleans native, she's a retired professional opera singer, a lyric coloratura soprano who has performed internationally. Her mission is to awaken and empower all humanity through prayer and forgiveness for the healing of the world. Did I have that correct?
Yes.
Lyric coloratura. Stephen Fleming is a seeker of truth, raised in the principles of unity since the age of 6. He began attending Youth of Unity at Unity of New Orleans in 1976, where Reverend Ruth Childress Murphy made the prediction that Stephen would one day become a Unity minister. And she made that prediction when you were about 6, is that right?
Actually, it was around 7.
7, okay.
Around 7.
Yeah, 6 is a little early. 7's
Yeah.
about right. Yeah. After moving to Houston as an adult, he served in the prayer ministry at Unity of Houston for many years and is now currently a student on the ministerial ordination path with Unity Worldwide Ministries. Over the last 2 years, Stephen has worked with several Unity churches in establishing their live stream capabilities on various social media platforms, a talent which came in very handy tonight. He teaches A Course in Miracles with an online weekly study group and remains committed to empowering people to live positive and loving lives filled with expansion and growth. He has served as guest speaker at numerous Unity churches and is currently completing his internship at Unity of New Orleans. I welcome you both. Stephen, it's great to meet you. Reverend Sheila, it's wonderful to work with you again. Reverend Sheila was on, and I tell you what, let's drop reverends and doctors and all of that stuff for the evening.
Yeah,
Okay,
just call me Sheila.
if you don't mind. So Sheila was, I first met Sheila when you were facilitating a graduation ceremony for a radical forgiveness workshop, a completion ceremony. And the church that you were working with, this was right after Hurricane Harvey. And that church, as I recall, had a flood and a fire in like the same week. And you came to our great hall and held the event there. And I got to meet you. And so did Danielle Mercadel, our board president, and also soon to be minister, who is part of this group and is facilitating from behind the scenes tonight. I think she'll join us at the end. Then you joined us online with Dr. Catherine Thomas, who's your longtime friend and mentor. And that was just several months ago. And so the committee which is it's called the Be the Change Initiative of Creative Life Spiritual Center, which works for social justice and equity, meets. And it was like, why don't we do an evening with Sheila, by herself? And then Sheila says, well, and I think Sandy said also, well, Sheila's son, you know, he's this wonderful spiritual presence as well, and leader, you know. And so it came together that here we are, a mother and son. This of itself is outstanding. To have the generational legacy, the passage of this energy on down through one family, that is amazing in and of itself. And we have a lot else to talk about as well. You shared with me, Sheila, on the phone the other day about your experience with the New Orleans Opera, when you sang with Shirley Verrett in Carmen. I'd love to hear more about that here, and about the amazing experiences that you must have had in the opera world, as a singer and as a woman of color. I'd love to hear about both. And then, kind of tying all of this together, it's the United Nations International Day of Peace. Now, at the UN, they've been taken up with other matters today, so they haven't really mentioned it, but it is on their website. And the theme this year is End Racism, End Racism. They've been doing the International Year of Peace since '76, I think. And every year it has a different theme. And so I thought we would talk about that some. So this is a conversation. It's not really an interview. And I'm going to just kind of facilitate wherever it goes, but it goes where it goes, and it'll be a beautiful and free form thing. So just to kind of drop the hockey puck, you know, in the middle of the rink, as they say, peace. What does it mean? What does it feel like? How do we know when we have it? What are we working toward here? And how much of that is individual and how much is collective? What do you think?
I think peace is a thread that we intertwine within our lives at the level of mind, body, and spirit, in order to facilitate a complete experience of and outward expression of peace, that we must first begin to connect from the center of our being and begin to establish a peace there, and then begin to expand that energy of peace that we have created at our central signature center, so to speak, and begin bringing it outward, you know, into our physical experience, into our lifestyle, into the work that we do, into, well, like, you know, Stephen and I are ministers, into the ministries that we participate in, and begin to make peace a core aspect of our lives. And I don't believe that if we don't start peace at the core of our being, that we can facilitate peace moving outward and supporting a framework of peace for all people in all places at all times.
Thank you. We sing, "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me" at the end of every service. We have for a million years. A lot of unity and religious science centers do, because if it doesn't begin with us, then it could be happening and we don't know it, because we're caught up in conflict.
Absolutely.
Stephen, you're a student and a teacher of A Course in Miracles. Can you give us a course perspective on peace?
Yeah, I can definitely give you a course perspective on peace, and I can also give you my perspective on peace. And thank you, Mother, for that very eloquent answer on peace. And I would expect nothing less coming from you. Mine's is a little bit more simple. And the things that that I teach from an inward out perspective. So I teach truths that are truths to me. And so within myself, there can be no peace unless there's an appreciation, a self-appreciation of myself. And I believe that that's what Jesus was attempting to establish in his ministry in first century Palestine over 2,000 years ago, when their culture was attempting to oppress them, and teach them that they were not enough, based on their external things like finances and where they lived and things like that. And so their culture taught them that that the wealthy were more loved by God, and so they were taught that, and so that was ingrained in their consciousness. So there was a lack of appreciation, a self appreciation, which is what really set the groundwork for Jesus's ministry. And so, which is why he came up with sayings like "Blessed are the poor" and things like that, which they loved. They loved that. He was a big hit, because he taught self appreciation, and from that appreciating the value of oneself, then we can then begin to discuss peace, but it has to start from an inward an inward experience where one is appreciating themselves, where one is realizing that they're more than enough, where one appreciates all aspects of themselves. Then one can experience peace.
This is fascinating. Do you agree with this? Do you agree, Stephen, with the idea that the Hebrew Testament prophets, when they were saying things like "Woe unto thee, Jerusalem," we're not talking about like violation of a moral code, that people were sinning, that God was going to punish them, but they were talking about oppression from leadership. They were talking about a stratification of society and the fact that people were getting wealthy and the poor were getting trampled on.
I agree with you, and I think it's also important to take into consideration, the number of translations that the Bible actually went through. So the people, for example, when it went through its first translation from the Hebrew and Aramaic text into Greek, and the people that actually did the translations were not from the Hebrew culture, so it lost a lot of translation just taking that stop. And then, on into the English, it lost a lot more. So, yeah, I mean, so people, and so then here we are now, we're wanting to take everything to be like this literal thing, and it already lost so much of its meaning and stuff like that. So, yeah, I agree with you. There was a lot of corruption. There was a system. The temple was essentially a middleman. It was a big business where people could actually pay for forgiveness of sins and things like that. And Jesus comes along, as well as not just Jesus, but a couple of other prophets came along, attempting to let them know you don't have to go to the middleman. And that was kind of upsetting things with the religious institution.
Yeah. And then Christianity instituted that. I mean, they drove the Crusades in that way. Go and sacrifice your life, or usually the lives of your serfs, in the Holy Land, and your whole family will be sin will be remitted for your whole family. Yeah, that's fascinating. And when you mention the middleman, eliminating the middleman, doesn't it seem to you this is what New Thought does too?
Absolutely.
You go right to the source of your own being. And people like us act as facilitators, coaches, vision casters, what have you, but we're not doing it for you. Oh no.
Right.
Yeah, we're not
Absolutely.
doing it.
There is no middleman.
There is no middleman.
No,
there
there's
really
only
is.
one, and there's only one of us anyway, even though there are many aspects of us and different nationalities and belief systems and so forth, but in truth there's only one of us. And therefore, when we are dealing with pulling us together into a collective understanding of something that is that significant. The key is really reminding us that there is only one of us and that we're coming together to bring this truth to the surface so that it can play a major part in all of our lives and not just a few.
Yes. And everyone can access it from wherever they are.
Exactly.
It's probably the case that, well, it is the case that many people who have been stepped on in society have more work to do within themselves to, as Stephen put it, appreciate themselves and value themselves, because they've not been valued by the culture. They're starting from a more distant place within themselves to get to this than somebody who's lived in relative ease and comfort and cracks open a Catherine Ponder book and reads You Can Have It All. And they're like, well, of course I can. I've always known that, you know. So how do we, because this is a personal interest of mine and also this committee's, how do we communicate this information most effectively to people who have been oppressed, that they can trust, not us so much, because you prove trust, you prove the right to be trusted over time. You don't ask for that, you know, but that they can trust the center of their own soul as a
Stephen?
safe place to go.
Well, what I believe, or what worked for me, was to realize the dynamics that play out underneath my awareness. And I had to learn about these things. So basically, to educate people on how our thoughts and beliefs, our thoughts are the building blocks of everything that we experience. You know, first of all, you know, create like a comprehensive understanding so that they actually know the reason why thoughts and beliefs rule our consciousness and perception and unchallenged and go by unchallenged is because we don't notice them. That's where their power is. We don't notice them, you know, but once we actually start recognizing them, I mean, it was just like me. I had so many instances that taught me, you know, Stephen, no, it's you. And initially I'm thinking it's them, it's them, you know. And then next thing you know, I'm like, well, you know, why do these people not appreciate me? Why aren't they appreciate me? I'm going over here and I'm going to leave this place. I'm going to go over there because, you know, they don't appreciate me. I'm going to go somewhere else, you know, and going through all of that just to figure out that it was me who wasn't appreciating myself. You know, and so, and learning that after I went through this grief moment where I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to watch Netflix and stuff like that. I didn't even want to, you know, do my homework. I just wanted to watch Netflix. And so, you know, at some point I was able to still get my assignments done in between my Netflix binge. And it came to me that I was the one that wasn't appreciating myself. And so that actually set up a light bulb in my mind. I was like, well, what else is operating underneath the curtain, behind the curtains, behind the scenes and things like that? And I learned a whole lot after that. I was like, oh my God, I've been projecting on this situation. I've been projecting on these people. So people have a right to know where their thoughts are impacting 100%, not 99%, 100% of what they're experiencing. And if they know, you know, that changes the whole game. See, if they don't know, then it can go about, then Eric can just go around and just hide, and, you know, and people are, you know, brothers turning against brothers and stuff like that, and thinking it's the other person, it's them, and it's really our own projections.
You know, that reminds me of, it's one of my favorite sayings, and I use it quite a lot, is that what you think of me is none of my business, but what I think of me is what shapes and defines my life. And that when we begin to tap into the power that is truly there for us, that realization that, first of all, that we're God, that we have all of the power that all of those powerful people that we believe are greater than us have. And what we have to do is learn how to bring that forth, tap into it and utilize it and trust it. When we begin to understand our own self-worth and we begin to tap into that power and utilize it, then we can begin to feel that we are significant, that we play a major role in this whole dynamic, and bring ourselves onto that path that leads us into living that truth of day to day, moment by moment, without letting anyone demean, diminish, or demoralize us.
Do you agree with the statement? I think it was Gandhi. It could have been Chuang Tzu. I'm not sure. But the statement that to be unharmed, become harmless.
To be unharmed, become harmless.
Become harmless.
Yeah, I believe that. Because what we put out is what we get back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we are harming, if we are attacking, if we are demeaning, diminishing, and demoralizing others, well, because what we give out is what we get back. Hey, we're going to get that back. But if our primary intention in this world, this very confusing world, is to be the vehicle for love, to be the vessel for love, no matter what's going on, to stand in the truth of what we know we are, and to give only that, then we begin to see it happening all around us. And it becomes a matter of recognizing who we are collectively as we begin to tap into that at a greater level.
Mm-hmm. There's a conversation going on throughout New Thought about, this is really the first time that New Thought has taken on the question of social justice in a big way across our churches and centers. And there's a conversation that goes on about a balance between personal responsibility and social change. To the extent that what you've just said, and which I personally totally agree with, can be used against you. In that all you got to do is change your mind, and all the poor will be unpoor, and all the oppressed will be unoppressed, and all of the first will be last, and the last will be first, if we just all do our personal inner work. And there are people who use that, or are concerned about other people using that as a stalling tactic.
Yeah, but aren't we talking about energy?
We are.
And energy is energy. It functions in a dynamic, or in a way that is always consistent. So if we're talking about energy, and if we are utilizing energy, then it will have the reaction, it will have the result of the way in which we use the energy. I can't see that it could be otherwise. If we're not utilizing the energy correctly, then it's going to be something else. Speak, Stephen.
Well, I believe that there's always a process that's taking place spiritually. And, whether we see it or not, whether we recognize it or not, there's always a process that's constantly taking place. And I think that anytime and again, it's, I can't emphasize more, as far as monitoring our thoughts and being more accountable for our thoughts and things like that, because anytime we start to create a situation in our own mind, not outside of us, but in our own mind, that there's something wrong here, okay, then we miss out on what is right. We automatically darken our consciousness and we miss out on the gift or the blessing or whatever it is that's in the process of revealing or manifesting itself in time. Anytime because we have to understand that everything in human history, everything that we experience is not just, it didn't start overnight. Okay, so everything in human history is thousands and even millions of years in the making, and it's like a wave. It's a constant wave, and this wave is constantly unfolding. And so, for any person to think that they have all of the wherewithal to actually be able to come to a particular point in space and time and space, and look at this part of the wave, this particular part of the wave from this finite perspective, and think that they can then encompass everything about that wave, everything that went into that wave, and all of the millions of things and decisions and stuff like that are going to happen from that wave 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 years from now. Does that really make sense? So I believe that there's a process that's constantly happening. Now, does this mean that we don't try, we don't put our best foot forward? No, that's not what I'm saying. But just so yes, do what it is that's in you to do. What feels naturally is what's in you to do. But don't bypass your divinity either. Mm-hmm. Don't bypass that part of you that can actually see that there is something that's developing here. No, don't bypass your humanity, but also don't bypass your divinity.
That is beautiful.
Yep.
Aren't we educated to think we have to figure it all out? That we have to be able to know what's going to happen 50, 100, 1,000 years from now, to be clever, to be wise, to be, respected. Isn't that kind of the left brain educational process? Did I get that right? Left or I can never remember which does what, but
it doesn't.
Does something.
It doesn't matter. But it's just a compensation. That's someone that has to know it all. That's just a compensation. We all have compensations, and it's just a compensation for another version of not being enough. So now you have to be a know-it-all. I think that the beginning of wisdom, is basically to say you don't know anything. That's the beginning of wisdom, because that can actually open you up to what spirit is trying to tell you without, so you can get out of your own way, get out of the way of your personality, which thinks it knows, so that you can actually access that part of you that really does know.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I'm thinking like beginner's mind in Zen, or the Fool card in the Major Arcana, the Tarot deck, the Zero card, which is also the Infinity sign. It's like you start at the place of not knowing and grow from there. And that's a whole new way of looking at things for an awful lot of humans.
Jesus actually said that with unless you become like little children. That's exactly what he meant. Yeah. That's what he was talking about. Unless you become like that, and get rid of all and unlearn all of that stuff, all these mental constructs that we've taken on in our society and stuff like that, and just let them go, and then allow the present moment to speak to you and teach you what it's trying to tell you, so you can get out of your own way, then you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven, which is right here, right now. Right. You don't have to wait till you die. It's here. And that's what he was trying to tell them there, but they didn't see it because of darkened consciousness. And it's the same thing with us right now. As soon as we begin to say that there's something wrong here, we miss what's right, and we miss what's developing.
Yes.
Emma Hopkins said, the world will persist in exhibiting before you. The world will persist in exhibiting before you what you persist in affirming the world is. I've used that for forever. I love that. Well, I love her. Just the way she put words together, and also the emphasis and the fact she kind of grabbed you by the throat, when she said these things, just coming up out of the book. So our consciousness manifests our experience, is our position in New Thought. And to have the kingdom of heaven or the realm of heaven at hand, where it's evident to us, but as scripture said, men see it not, because we're caught up in, as you say, Stephen, our mental constructs and our compensating coping mechanisms and things, you know, that yes, because and a lot of that shields our feelings. Let me come to Sheila. Radical forgiveness is achieved, is it not, at the emotional level, in that at the intellectual level, we're never going to understand necessarily why things happened the way they did or who played what role in them, but at the emotional level, we find tranquility. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, the radical forgiveness basically is to start with, to start with, is that there is nothing that we cannot forgive. There is absolutely nothing that we cannot forgive. And the reason is that forgiving it, even if it's something that has hurt us, the reason for that is until we forgive it, which is to give that which is greater, that which is more deeply profound, for that which is, instead of that which is showing up, that's causing pain, and that we are willing to let go of that, and we're willing to allow the truth of our being, the truth of God, to step in and allow us to move through whatever painful situation, whatever difficulty, whatever breakdown is in the process, to move through and create that open space. And when we do that through forgiving whatever is happening, whatever is around us, whatever is in our midst, in our minds, in our bodies, in our spirit, and knowing that it is not the truth of us, and opening ourselves and being willing to allow the power and the presence of truth to step in through the act of forgiveness, creates an amazing new paradigm within us and within the realm in which we live and function. And that's basically what that's about. There is nothing that we cannot forgive. And forgiveness means to give for, or to give up for, to give up whatever misperception, the truth, to give love in the place of hate, that kind of stuff. So that's the power of radical forgiveness, is that we don't have to question forgiving something, that we make the decision that, well, one of the things we used to, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And I always would rather be happy. So in forgiving an act of someone or something that's going on in the world, in keeping that from weighing us down and from binding us to what's going on, we open a space. And when we open the space, according to science, there are many others who would follow us in opening that space and moving through that new awareness and that new understanding. And so that's what radical forgiveness does. It allows us to forgive something that, no matter how horrendous it is or appears to be, that we would rather be free from carrying that pain and moving forward to the highest possibility, and being in alignment with the power and the presence of God, of infinite spirit, than to hold on to what happened. So, that's what radical forgiveness, and it is radical, because we decide, I don't care what it is, I'm going to forgive it because I want to be free.
Two things come to mind off of that. One is, that sounds to me like becoming like a little child.
Yes, it is.
returning to that innocence and vulnerability today, no matter what's happened in the past. And then let me
Yes.
put this question to you. Is the radical part of the forgiveness the persuasion that a person has to make to themselves, the commitment a person has to make to themselves to get to the place where they're willing to do that? Because we stack up hurts and we evaluate them and we assign them weight based on trauma. And
Well, radical forgiveness teaches that forgiveness is the gift you give yourself. It's not really for the other person.
sure,
It's not for the person who hurt you or did something to upset you or whatever. It's for you. It's not for them. So what you're doing is, by forgiving someone for something they have said or done, then you free yourself from carrying it. It's not for the other person. It is for you. It's to free you. And the great thing about Colin Tipping's work is that it has proven that the process of it, as you follow it, as you do it, as you go through it, you begin to feel that freedom, that peace, that upliftment, and you no longer really care about what happened, because now you feel as if a heavy weight, a burden has been lifted off of you. And so that's the thing about radical forgiveness. Am I making sense?
absolutely. And I think I know the answer to this. It's kind of a rhetorical question, but now you feel safe that that's not going to, that if you drop this thing, it's not going to happen again. Because so often we're taught, keep your defenses up. If you've been hurt, what is it? Once bitten, twice shy. You know, if I've been hurt, then anybody who reminds me of who hurt me or any situation that, you know, is reminiscent of, but you're saying you let it go and you have a sense of security again, that you're
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's what the radical forgiveness is about. When you let that go, it doesn't mean that you're stupid or dumb or how could you let that. What it is that you let that go and you open the gateway to peace and this feeling of serenity, because it takes weight to carry anger, hatred, resentment, to keep carrying that. And it gets heavier and heavier and heavier the more you carry it. So letting it go is such a powerful gift to yourself that I love forgiveness. It's like free at last. Yeah,
Really. Which is what A Course in Miracles is all about too, right, Stephen?
it is.
I mean,
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
it's basically a
free at last.
masterwork on forgiveness.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say offhand, 2/3 of the people who come to our center have a plan. They're working for their lives, something they enjoy doing, or a number of things they enjoy doing. But they don't necessarily feel like they live in a safe and loving universe. And the other third feel like they live in a safe and loving universe, but they don't have a plan. And I'm not saying that the ones who don't have a plan ought to have a plan and, you know, everybody ought to be straightened out. What I'm saying is that this is what they come to us for. They come to our literature for it. They come to our classes for it. To believe that despite all appearances to the contrary, this world works. Our organization came up with a new slogan a few years ago, which they got, I believe, from Werner Erhard of Est and the Forum and such, Landmark. It's building a world that works for everyone. And there was a big conversation when that became the new slogan. The slogan before had been change your thinking, change your life. This is also true. It didn't stop being true when they got a new slogan. But when the new slogan came in, there was a big conversation about, doesn't the world already work for everyone at the level of consciousness? Everyone's creating something, everyone's experiencing it. But yes and no. And it comes back to what Stephen said. If somebody doesn't know they're a choice, how much choice do they have? They're plugging into a system obliviously that, despite the fact they don't know it exists, is working, is operating. And so manifestation occurs regardless, which then makes our job to be about the recognition of consciousness as supreme, as the what's been called the primacy of non-physical reality. That out of the unseen, it comes into the scene. So let me throw one more hat at you. Ernest Holmes is the founder of religious science. He gave a very famous talk, 1959, not long before he left the earth, called The Sermon by the Sea, out at the Asilomar Conference Center, where we'd met for years and years, and still do from time to time. And he said how wonderful it would be if there should arrive on earth a group of people who were for something and against nothing.
Mhm.
Does that work? Is that too abbreviated? Is that too glib? What do you think?
I'd like to hear from Stephen first. Stephen?
Well, I'm with you, Reverend Jesse, that that the world already works. However, if a person, and again, I'm going to go right back to the self-appreciation. If a person does not see themselves as wholly beautiful, then they have a warped lens from which to look at the world as it's working.
Mhm.
Okay. And so, from that warped lens, things look a lot differently than from, if you are coming from a place of wholeness where you recognize, who you are, where you recognize, your all of the things that maybe you once thought were flaws are actually beautiful, were previously unrealized gifts, and understanding that you are a part of a pattern, and you are not like this island that's alone. You're part of a pattern. Okay. And so you're part of all of your brothers and sisters. And so when you want to see yourself as this lone island, that's, from that finite perspective, you'll never be able to see the world as it's actually working. From this limited finite perspective, the personality will never be able to see all of the ways that the world is working. And it's impossible for the limited finite personality to see how the world is working from the lens of not being enough. It's experiencing itself and it's colorizing everything that it thinks is out there, and it's really just seeing itself being projected onto out there. So it's colorizing everything like the world is just basically a silver screen, and it's like when you go in a movie theater and it's just so yes, I agree with you. The world does work. I believe, however, in the importance of empowering people to, for example, be able to look underneath the hood of their automobile so they can actually see what's really going on. And I'm being using a metaphor as far as automobile. I mean, in our minds, to know what's really going on. And so we can actually really see what's really doing the things, what's really the building blocks, and how when we apply beliefs to whatever thoughts that we're having, how it just supercharges those thoughts and it literally transforms what we see. It literally makes it like it's the truth. Now, does it mean it's the truth? No, but it is the relative truth. It's the relative truth to that personality, and that's just how they see it. No one can tell them differently. Okay, and that's one of the things that we're experiencing in this country, this polarized country, where people are so fixed on their beliefs and things like that, and thinking that it's right. This is right, and I'm not here to take any sides, because really, no belief, no thought is more important than a person. No thought is worth, dividing you from someone else. No thought, nor belief or anything like that is worth that, in my opinion. Okay.
Thank you. That's beautiful. No thought. I want everyone to hear this and sit with this a minute. No thought is worth more than a person. That is brilliant and beautiful. It should be a meme that goes everywhere.
I
No
knew
thought.
he'd have something phenomenal to say on that.
Well, so have you.
That's why I turned it over to him. I wanted to hear what he said. Yeah.
The two of you, it's just absolutely awesome. So what do you think about it, Reverend Sheila? Sheila, I'm sorry. Back to Reverend again.
In truth, there's only one of us anyway. And whether we are acting from that realization or not, things are unfolding in a way that I believe, even when it's not happening the way some of us think it ought to happen, that there is a movement. There is a movement. And I believe that when there is something that's rising for the highest and best for all, in many times it will create conflict. It will create maybe some havoc even, to get us to look at, okay, what is going on? What are we being called to do? How can we draw near to what is possible for us and align with facilitating that upwardly progressive movement, so that all of the things that we're seeing, where the conflict and the chaos and the anger and the rage and all of that, which is happening to get our attention anyway. So how do we allow ourselves to tap into and say, what is this for? And that's something in the Radical Forgiveness and Course in Miracles. What is this for? Because everything that we see and everything that we experience, it is purposeful and has meaning. And it's up to us. All of us are God. Yeah, we don't always act like it, but all of us are God. And there is a point at which a collective shift can happen that causes us to say, this is not working. And I know that something else can be brought forth to guide, to lead, guide, and direct us in a direction that's not only going to be great for me, but it's going to be great for many of us. And when we reach a critical mass of those who have come into that realization that is great for many of us, it will increase to the point that ultimately it can be great for all of us. And I really believe that, we are headed for something. And they say breakdown always precedes breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we are headed for something. I feel this within the depths of my being, that we are on the pathway to a greater realization that will bring us back to our true selves and that deep understanding of who we are and whose we are and what is possible as we all draw into what is being called for, because it's being called. Something's being called for. And when we begin to tap into that, to discover what is being called for. That's why I say frequently, more than once a day, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? I'm willing to do your will. Just tell me in a way that I will understand. There is something drawing us out of the madness and the chaos and bring us into a right understanding, comprehension of who we are, whose we are, and what's being called for. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on so long.
That was magnificent. That was magnificent. Yeah, I
Great
mean, there's,
answer.
yeah, absolutely. There's a school of thought that says, well, it's all, it's chaos out there and people are crazy and they're at each other's throats. And there's some evidence for that, of course. But there's another school of thought that says, how great a time for us to be here, for us to be alive, because some stuff that has never worked, that has been entrenched in power for a really long time, is cracking and crumbling right before our eyes and with our help.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
So what a
And
privilege.
breakdown always precedes breakthrough.
And breakdown breaks, yeah, and when things are falling apart, they're really falling together. Yeah, it's it's completely amazing.
Yeah.
We have Lisa and Danielle and I have worked together really closely for pretty much ever. But when the pandemic struck and we shut down our center, we kept going down there every Sunday and filming a service. And at one point in time, you weren't even supposed to drive from one county into the next, for a couple of weeks there in April or May or whatever it was of that year. And these two showed up. And so we have formed a brother sisterhood kind of connection that is tremendous, that would not have happened without that sort of outside pressure on us. And we've had these great conversations and great understandings that we've come to about this balance that both of you are speaking about, of taking responsibility for inner consciousness, but not sweeping anything under the carpet of what needs repair in society. And to do that, and this is something I talk about a lot, in my sermons and lectures and stuff, is to start with the end in mind. So what would a world that's fully working for everybody look like? And one other thing, and then I'll shut up. There's a saying, or there's a thought, that someone with power never cedes power, never releases any of that power, because why would they? And yet, and Stephen alluded to this with the great spiritual geniuses of the ages, there are saints and sages and people who we only know about because they gave up power. Your Francis of Assisi is one example. Said, I want no wealth, I want no fame or fortune. And had he been a wealthy, what was it, rug merchant or a fabric, I think, garment, dyes and stuff, his family had a business. Had he lived in wealth and splendor during the 60 or 70 years that he got to live on the planet, we never heard of him or his product or anything else. It all would have gone to dust. Instead, there's a statue in every other garden across the planet because to this man, because he gave it up, because in humility, he came to the source of his own being. And I wish that, frankly, for my Christian sisters and brothers who are so often vocal about the necessity for salvation, is read the red ink. Read the red ink in your Bible and see what this man, in 3.5 hours of accumulated time of what we have recorded of his, see what he spoke of in humility, see what was important to him, and follow that. Let's see what we're getting to.
One of the favorite things
please.
that I say is, and every day, my prayer time, I end it with that. What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? I am willing to do your will. Just tell me in a way that I will understand.
Did you make that up?
No, not all of it, but it came from various things, and I just love it. And so I get told what I'm supposed to do.
Somebody, Sandy, Lisa, Danielle, PJ, one of you who's watching, can you capture that and put it in the chat? Would you
Yeah,
mind saying that again, please?
that is in A Course in Miracles.
Oh, it is in A Course in Miracles. Okay.
Yeah, that's what she was saying.
What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? I'm willing to do your will. Just tell me in a way that I will understand.
Yeah, I love that part too, because we talk about the good old subconscious mind, and how it works in symbols and dreams and all of this kind of thing. And I like the idea of going to the subconscious mind saying, give it to me in plain English. If it's important, if it's critical for me to know it. The other stuff is a jigsaw puzzle. I can figure that out when I have the time. But when it's like really, critical and time constraints and all this, give it to me in plain English. Go here, do this. Or sometimes stop that, put that down. Yeah.
I like that one too. Yes.
You like that? Because sometimes it is, it's like, no. That's, that's never worked for you. So yeah, don't do that again. Lisa, Sandy, Danielle, PJ, since we're not on Facebook and we're not taking comments on Facebook, but we're at the 5 minutes out from an hour time frame, please interact with our guests. Any questions or comments you have for them?
Stephen?
Well, she was asking PJ and Sandy and Reverend Lisa if they have any comments.
I just popped on to give you a 5-minute warning. And Stephen, I would like to say thank you for the idea of the appreciation. I've never thought about it that way. And that's a radical shift, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Reverend Lisa.
This is PJ. I first want to thank Reverend Sheila and Stephen. Oh my gosh, you have grown since we both prayed ourselves back into unity, friend. Did I say growed? I meant grown. I mean, immensely. It was just divine providence that we were supposed to pray each other back into a praying group. And I'm just so grateful for that. So here's my question. And you know what? I think this is going to set us up for a round 2. We got to have you back. So my question is, how do Black people forgive the atrocities that have been perpetrated against us? How do we keep other people from, blaming us for our condition? So how do we apply forgiveness right there, and how do we move forward? I totally get what you're saying. I do. I just also know, back to what Reverend Jesse was saying, how it could be misinterpreted and misused and then redirected back toward people who have been oppressed.
Well, I'd like to answer that, PJ, and that's a really good question. And I'd like to take it right back to teaching people, all people, including Black people, the dynamics that take place under our conscious awareness at all times, not focus on this one thing where we're missing the real keys. We're missing the real things that are pulling the strings. There's really things that are pulling the strings under our conscious awareness, PJ. And they're our thoughts. Our thoughts are the building blocks of everything we experience. There's nothing outside of our thoughts. There's nothing that we can experience outside of our thoughts. There is no world that exists outside of our thoughts. So therein lies the pathway to healing for all people, including Black people. Okay. So to first of all, understand the source of the suffering. And that is going to require some accountability. I'm not here to say that there is not an energy that has contributed, but nothing dictates what you experience. There is no outside force that dictates what you experience. That is giving away your power. So Black people and many people, Black people are not experiencing as far as dynamics of pain and not being enough and stuff like that. That's a human condition. Now, that's a very specific type of human condition based on a specific type of histories and things like that that are with Black people as far as here in America. There are specific pains and traumas and things like that, specifically. But it still all starts with our thoughts. It all starts with our thoughts, and just teaching them where, without trying to fix anything or solve anything, just teach people where causality lies. You know, begin to, and that is an empowering thing where they begin to understand what's really creating it. You know, what's really creating it. So that way we're not looking at it, we're not looking at the effect. Okay. As far as the injustices and stuff, that's still an effect. That is an effect of our consciousness. That is not a cause. That is an effect. So in order to really fix it, we've got to, you don't fix a car, for example, by fixing the external. You go directly to the root of it. And I'm not trying to make it like it's a car, but you don't fix anything without going directly to the root of it, or it's really not fixed. It's really not fixed. So if you attempt to put in a bunch of systems and stuff like that to make it more fair, more equitable, that's all great. But what are you doing about consciousness? What are you doing about thoughts? What are you doing about increasing self-appreciation? That was the essence of Jesus's ministry. That was really his ministry. That is why he was such a great hit. So teach the people to appreciate themselves, and you have a transformation from the inside out. The system begins to automatically transform itself. People begin to recognize their own power. They begin to not look at other people from a certain standpoint of vengeance, because they recognize who they are now. And they recognize where their gifts are. They begin to see themselves beautiful. See, we're talking about seeing things through the lens of pain. And that's where it comes from. So in order to correct that, we have to focus on an increasing of a self-value. And that doesn't start with asking, for example, white people to give that to us. That's within. That's completely within. And then later on, we can start talking about, equitable conversations, and we can start talking about, reparations. Maybe I've heard people talking about that and stuff like that. Then we can start talking about, but those are all secondary things. The primary thing, PJ, is our thoughts, and they dictate everything.
Sandy's got her hand up. I just want
sorry.
to interject this last thought. You are 1,000% correct. I read a book decades ago by Carter G. Woodson. The title is The Miseducation of the Negro.
Yes.
And back then, the term Negro was acceptable.
Uh-huh.
Carter G. Woodson, one of the main principles he laid out in that book was exactly what you're talking about. Black people have been miseducated to think that they are worthless and that they are dumb and stupid. And one thing he says is that if you train a man to go through the back door enough, eventually the man will go through the back door on his own, and he doesn't have to be told. Yeah. So to help people become conscious of thought and its effects after centuries of miseducation is a monumental task. I'm going to leave it there because Sandy's got her hand up, and I know we're running out of time. Please think about coming back.
And I just want to add real quickly, that's why I say, what you think of me is none of my business, but what I think of me is what shapes and defines my life.
Absolutely. Sandy, what's
Yeah,
your
yeah.
question?
And basically, I want to I just want to underscore all that is said. And it's in a lot of things that everything that you said, Stephen, and everything that Reverend Sheila said. I'm writing a book. Of course, it's still in my head. But the book is The Gifts of My Becoming.
Mhm.
The reason that that's so important to me is for so many years, I thought they were doing this and they were doing that, and I was the victim and they were wrong and I was right and all of this. But what I have learned going to the mat or going to my knees or going deep in study is just what Stephen says. It's everything that happens to me and happens through me, and everything that I touch and everything that impacts me. It's all a thought. It's a thought that begins in my head. And Louise Hay said, it's only a thought, and a thought can be changed. Now, I believe that this is true, whether it's talking about my forgiveness of something else, including someone else, including myself, or my perception toward an experience, or my view of the world around me. It's all in my head. It's all in my head. And when I adjust my thought about it, that adjusts my experience of it and what comes from me next. I do not think, I hear references even here to special cultural groups or special ethnic, ethnic categories of people and all that. To me, none of that matters, because that's only a group of individuals. And anytime you take a person and give them the knowledge and the exposure and train them, show them a different perspective and train them in it, they will shift their thinking.
Mhm.
I don't care who they are. You can say, well, okay, it's Black people. Yeah, yes. You can say anything. You can call me anything you want to. It's what I answer to that matters.
Mhm.
And
I
then
agree.
you can say, well, it's the rich kids, or it's the Republicans, or it's the Democrat. I don't care who you say. They're all made up of a group of individuals. And for anybody that you apply this rule to, it will make a difference.
Yep.
It's just a matter of introducing them to the idea, explaining another perspective, and then helping them to make that shift within them that really accepts that difference. And then you're off and running. I
I
don't care
agree.
if they're black, white, polka dot, or zebra striped.
I agree with you, Sandy. And as a matter of fact, all of my, I've been speaking at Unity of New Orleans, and all of my sermons have been on this very topic, and they love it. They love it. But all of my sermons, and of course they live stream, so all of those sermons are there if you ever want to see them. But they're all about our thoughts and how they impact everything. There's nothing that we can experience outside of that.
And
So.
see, the deal is that most people don't know where to begin. First of all, you convince them that there can be a difference. And then, okay, I know there can be a difference. Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Where do I begin?
I got an idea for where they can begin.
It's such a simple place to begin. Everybody can grasp it and everybody can do it.
Sunday morning at Unity in New Orleans, Sunday morning at Unity in Houston, Sunday morning at Creative Life Spiritual Center. 3 great places to begin. Pick your magic.
There you go.
And if you don't want them, then there's California and Michigan and Atlanta and, all across the world. We've got something going on here. And there is a reckoning coming for the people in power in this world who are holding that power fast, who are still engaged in oppression and in not seeing and in not hearing the cries of their human siblings. There's a reckoning coming, and it's not a reckoning of violence, and it's not even a reckoning at the polling place. It's the reckoning that comes that each one of us has had when we realize how toxic this is to us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, is when you realize, oh my God, if I only knew. then I change. You know, I heard the
And
Dalai
not
Lama.
only how
Hmm?
toxic it is to us, but a piece to add is that to also realize who we are, how powerful we are, how beautiful and blessed and amazing and capable we are.
Mm.
That's the biggie, is shifting from all of the self-hatred and so forth that's just spreading all around, and to tap into, number one, we are God. I mean, Brother Jesus tried to tell us that 15 million times. We are God. We have all of the capabilities that God has. And the moment that we make the decision to trust that, to believe that, to let it become the center of our being, and then utilize that to step forward in our lives, it will be awesome. It will be amazing. We can transform this entire world. That's my thought anyway.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What a great place to wrap. Yeah. What a beautiful world.
Reverend Jesse, thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
It's a
Thank you
more
so
beautiful
much.
world because you two are in it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stephen, Sheila. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Reverend Jesse.
And if you're
Thank you,
up
Reverend
for
Lisa.
it, we put you on the spot here and say, well, let's do this again. So and if you're up for it, we're serious. We're
Call on
serious.
us anytime, right, Stephen?
Yeah, just give us heads up like you did last time.
You know what I mean.
And we'll have
Absolutely.
we'll have it smooth, and we'll have it on Facebook, and as always, there are no mistakes. There's a high and holy reason that it rolled out this way tonight, but a lot of people are going to see this, and it's going to change a lot of lives. So once again, thank you so much. And who would like to give us as we say in the business, pray us out?
Oh,
Who
that's
would like
mom
to do
right
that?
there.
Great.
That's mom
Huh?
right there. All right.
Oh, you want me to pray? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Uh-huh.
All right.
So let's just take a moment and be still and centered, recognizing that there is one presence that accompanies us, and this infinite presence of love and knowledge and wisdom offers itself to us freely. Let us take that in and experience that presence right here, right now. A presence that sees no error with us, that sees us already as wholly beautiful, that yearns to bring forth into our experience everything to secure our release, whatever it takes, so that we may experience our beauty exactly as it is. Let us be overjoyed that this presence is not an external presence, it's not a foreign presence, but it is a presence that dwells within. It is a higher presence that we all have access to. Let us feel gratitude and joy from that. Let us feel that gratitude and joy in the name and after the nature of the teachings of our elder brother, Wayshore and master teacher. And so it is. Amen.
So it is. Amen.
Amen and a women.
Women too.